Is it really possible to get better at shooting without buying a bunch of fancy gadgets and tools? Let's find out together. I'm CJ, and maybe, like you, I've been doing a lot more dry fire recently. And the thing is, like any kind of training or workout, I want to improve. I want to get better, at least a little bit, after each time I do a dry fire session. I mean, isn't that your goal too? When I look around the internet, I find all these YouTube videos of all these different products I can get. They all cost a ton of money, and they all claim that they'll make me some kind of god-tier level shooter. If I'm being honest, I get the feeling like I have to get that stuff in order to really level up my skill. But this is dry fire we're talking about, and I'm not made of money here, guys. I don't want to buy a bunch of extra stuff just to let it collect dust in the closet for it never to be used. So let's go through 9 free tricks we can train with to become more disciplined, efficient, and proficient with our dry fire, all for the best price of free $99. First things first, we gotta have something to aim at, of course. When I was searching around the internet, I found a whole list of gadgets that I could get, from laser aiming devices to targets that react when I aim or shoot at them with those laser devices. I even found whole VR kits where I could set up virtual stages and virtual targets to train with, which actually sounds kind of interesting, so maybe I should take a look at that. But I'm on a budget, so I found things called scale targets. These are similar versions to the standard USPSA targets, and they are cheap and easy to set up. If you don't want to buy anything, you could just find an image on the internet and print one out and use it as a scale target for yourself. You could also use it as a stencil and cut out a piece of cardboard if you want. All we're trying to do here is give us something to aim at. Heck, you could even use a small piece of tape. That works in a pinch, and that's what I like to do most of the time, since it forces me to try and keep my red dot on that small piece of tape. You could also use a light switch or any other common small objects that you see around your house. The key here is to have something to aim at that your eye can focus on, and then you can bring your gun to the target. A quick tip before we move on is to make sure that the manufacturer of the gun recommends that your gun is safe to be dry fired. There are some guns out there, like the Springfield Hellcat, for example, that are only recommended to be dry fired with the use of snap caps so you don't damage the firing pin. Every gun's a little bit different, so make sure you just look that stuff up in the manual. I know how exciting that can be. Our next free tool is a zip tie. One thing that I hate doing when I'm dry firing is constantly having to rack my slide and reset the trigger, which is super unnecessary since this is a semi-automatic handgun. The whole point of automatic handguns is that you don't have to keep racking something over and over. There are all kinds of things, from magazines that reset the trigger to even things like the Mantis, but do I really have to have something like that just to reset the trigger? Well, I could spend a lot of money on any of these gadgets, and you totally can too if you want to, but I found a super budget way to achieve most of the same effect, and that is by taking an unused zip tie and sliding it through the chamber and the barrel of your handgun, then closing the slide. What this does is it prevents your trigger from fully depressing the sear, so your trigger will reset automatically. The downside is that your trigger pull won't feel 100% the same, so you won't feel the wall of the trigger that we're normally accustomed to feeling. Practicing a hard trigger pull during dry fire helps maintain stability while aiming, and in the end, it will help us improve our accuracy. If you want to see how stable your grip really is, then try this. Balance a quarter, a dime, or even a penny on the front of your handgun. Then aim down sights and try to keep the coin from falling off. For an even harder challenge, pull the trigger and see if you can keep the gun stable enough to prevent the coin from falling while you're pulling the trigger. This exercise will help you practice keeping your gun stable while you pull the trigger. And while it takes a lot of practice to master, the more stable you are during this exercise, the better your performance will be at the range. Okay, so let me ask you, do you shoot with both eyes open? If you do, have you ever thought about what your non-dominant eye is doing? It turns out, even when you're focusing hard, your brain is still trying to process the information coming from both eyes. Now, for some, their non-dominant eye might be the one throwing them off because it isn't aligned with their sights. This can happen and it's fine, but here's another cool free trick we can try. Take a small piece of tape and put it over the lens of your optic. This has a fun word called occluding or occlusion, and we do this to develop better aiming habits. It can be a bad habit, and I fall into it all the time too, guys, but It's really easy for us shooters to get sucked into the red dot when what we really want is to be focused on the target. This is counterintuitive to firing with iron sights, where the mantra is clear tip and blurry target. With this technique, we're getting better target focus, improving our target acquisition, developing better shooting habits by shooting with both eyes open, and overcoming what's known as bouncing ball syndrome, where the shooter follows the dot between targets instead of moving the dot to the target. Now, the biggest tool that will help us with our speed and getting faster during training is some kind of shot timer. Normally, shot timers are meant to randomly beep and then record how fast your initial shot and the time between your follow-up shots were. My first thought was that I didn't need a shot timer since I'm just doing dry fire and there won't be any kind of sound for the timer to pick up and measure my time by. Shot timers are a great tool to have for any shooter, but do you need to wait to dry fire until you have a nice timer? Well, as usual, the answer is no, because there are a ton of free timer apps in the app stores that offer a par timing feature. Now, par timing involves setting a target time on a timer to measure how quickly you can perform an action, such as drawing your firearm, for example. The goal is to repeatedly practice to improve your speed and consistently beat the time that you've set. Let's say you're drawing your gun and you want to get your draw time down to 0.7 seconds. Maybe set your par time for 0.5 seconds and see if you can beat that. Now, you might not ever be able to beat that 0.5 seconds, but if you set your par time to 0.7 a few weeks later, then maybe you're beating it and you're coming around at the 0.6 second mark. Doing these types of exercises can really boost your speed over the long run. And so doing things like getting a free timer app and keeping a log to track your improvement is super important with training. That leads me into the next free tool that I found, and that's just a range book or some kind of training log. You can keep track in a notebook or on little notes on your phone and plan and track your dry fire sessions. Keeping a log will help us stay disciplined and see our progress over time. We can do things like keep logs of what drill or drills we did, and even keep track of our par time on each of those drills. The last free tool I have for you guys is resources like YouTube, your local library, or making friends at the range and getting them to help you out. There are even online programs where you can upload your video and get critiqued by trainers. Or if you're not that brave, you could just play back the video of yourself and try to find where you can improve just from a second point of view. You might see something that you didn't expect. Our next batch of tools isn't exactly free, but they still are common enough and will help with our training, especially as we get more advanced. So let's look at that real quick. This one is still pretty cheap, and it's the classic snap caps. Snap caps are great, but the downside is that they are usually aluminum and super light. If you're practicing mag changes, the weight of your mag really does matter. So to counter this, load up some bullets without any powder or primers so you can get the full weight of the bullets in your magazines. I even know some people who load up their mags with dummy bullets, then top off each mag with some kind of snap cap, just for a quick visual reference. Moving on, and this can get expensive, my buddy Josh, who loves playing guitar, tells me how a lot of guitarists usually keep one guitar in every room at an arm's distance so that they can reduce the barriers to begin practicing. So that's not for everyone, but this is one key idea that we can incorporate into dry fire. One element of dry fire is making it easy to do. And I'm not talking about easy in the sense that the practices should be easy, but make it easy for you to get your belt on and start dry firing. If you need to get your belt on and unload your magazines and load them up with dummy rounds and all that, then you're probably never likely to do it. So to counter this, make your training sessions as easy as possible so that if you only have 20 minutes to dry fire, you can spend the full 20 minutes dry firing. Many people have full rigs with identical practice guns to make dry firing super quick and stop or starting really easy and simple. This is by no means a budget option, but it still can be super helpful. So maybe that's something you'd want to try too. At the end of the day, guys, after searching through the gadgets and gizmos I found on the internet and learning some alternative tricks and tools, I learned you can still be very effective with your dry fire training, and not by spending a bunch of money on cool toys, but by simply being honest. Dry fire is usually done by yourself, and if you're not honest about where your sight was when the gun went click, that is going to reflect in live fire. Fundamentals on good trigger control, having the right grip are the most important aspects of being a good marksman. And when you have a gun, you can still practice those fundamentals just by using a few free tools that we talked about. But if you're like me, you might find out that when you're training that your red dot is a bit fuzzy or distorted in some way. But is that true, or is it just your bad eyes? Well, to find out, my buddy Josh can help you out with that right over here.